Hello, I'm Julian Lee and welcome back to Global Careers. And here we are in the Working Well section of the course. And this week what we're going to be looking at is basically kind of around the theme of energizing your work and staying buoyant and keeping positive and motivated and that sort of thing. One of the things I think, a common concept or a common term that you would have heard with respect to, I suppose life in general, but also work especially, is the concept of burnout. And so in some sense, what this week is about trying to avoid ever having to recover from burnout by not actually getting burnt out in the first place. And looking at some of the tips that have been given in various places with respect to avoiding burnout and keeping your work positive and energized and buoyant and purposeful and fulfilling. And these are, I guess, along the lines of various tips that you can do. And I want to keep this lecture sort of relatively light on, given the sort of point in the semester that it's in. But let's just quickly look at the concept of burnout. And the World Health Organization describes burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And what it says is, and I'll read a little bit from this website, is that it says, burnout is included in the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases, or the ICD-11, as an occupational phenomenon. And it says that burnout is defined in the ICD-11 as follows. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It is characterized by 3 dimensions. First are feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. Second is increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism relating to one's job, which is of course a sentiment that we would really want to avoid given how much of our life we spend in our job. And finally, it refers to or has a dimension of reduced professional efficacy. And efficacy is, I guess, your effectiveness. And if you have reduced professional efficacy, it's the feeling of not being as effective and not being able to be as productive and as useful and so on and so forth in your job. So these are the 3 dimensions that are pointed out as constituting burnout, which is of course something that we would want to avoid. And it also goes on to note, which is I think a point of relevance and some interest, that burnout refers specifically to phenomena in the occupational context and should not be applied to describe experiences in other areas of life. So I guess the domain of experience that we might call burnout is something that warrants further attention and more deliberate attention to understand why it's so demarcated from work and non-work life. But in this lecture, what we're really trying to focus on is not so much on burnout, but actually sort of trying to take a more positive take in the sense of what is it that we can do not to recover from burnout, which is something that hopefully we can avoid altogether, but rather how we can maintain a life and a lifestyle and a work life which is positive, and we never get to the point of burnout anyway, and we don't get to the point of feeling so negative about our work, and hopefully we can infuse our work with and our lives with positive or positivity and positive vibes and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what this lecture is about today. So helping me to become aware of some of the ideas which I'm going to discuss today is again the book How to Have a Good Day by Carolyn Webb. By no means are all the ideas discussed here and in that chapter ones which are sort of uniquely hers, but she sort of brings together some of the common thinking and some of the common research around, I guess, the themes that we're dealing with today. And just a note about that research is that a lot of it is based on psychological research, which at the current time is facing a bit of what's called a replication crisis, in that some findings that have been trumpeted in psychology, when they attempt to replicate that experiment, they don't succeed, and so therefore, in some sense, the discipline of psychology is in a bit of a crisis, so to speak. Without trying to get into that, my point being that some of the things that that will be discussed here, you will have to, as always, decide, to the extent to which it fits you or it's not kind of suitable for your purposes or kind of doesn't gel with you. Because not everything is going to fit everyone. And in any case, even with these psychological experiments, done on like whatever, hundreds or thousands of people, it's definitely not the case that 100% of the people will say that they report a benefit from whatever the activity is. So on the one hand, we take it with a grain of salt. On the other hand, there's a lot of critique to be delivered towards what might be generally referred to as like the self-help industry. At the same time, I think there is some benefit to it. So I'm not one of the people who is like completely negative or anti what might be called self-help or kind of business books. I think they can be of interest, and what I'm going to do today is kind of like commentate on some of the tips with respect to developing a positive work life and relationship with work that either kind of resonate with me, or I'll commentate on where I think it doesn't work, at least for me, but may well work for you. All right, so yeah, here we go. So one thing that does resonate with me, and I would be feeling fairly confident in talking about this one, is that humans have an intrinsic negativity bias, right? So if you have a given day, as we may have discussed before, you would have had any number of interactions, and naturally the interaction that's going to be in your mind and that you're going to be ruminating on is the one interaction that you had during the evening or during the day or during the party or in those emails that you dealt with throughout the day that was negative or a bit cross or very cross and your mind is not going to dwell a long time on like those 3 or 4 really lovely emails or interactions that you have. You're going to like become like stressed or absorbed by the negative aspects of your day, irrespective of how small they were. So therefore, one of the things to begin with is acknowledging your and our intrinsic negativity bias. And and not only just acknowledging it, which is important, but also considering instituting things that help us to consciously work against it and to consciously undertake activities that help us to work against it or work with it or to supplement it in a positive way. So to counter this, you'll need to actively turn your attention towards the positive things that happened in your day and the things that you are grateful for in your day and in your work day and even in your life, which are very easy to overlook. And one of the things that is also true, at least in my own case, is that even on like the crappiest days, which thank goodness I don't have a great many of, but by no means are they completely absent. Even on like the worst days, I will always have colleagues who I trust and who kind of who understand where I'm coming from and understand the experience, who I can moan to, and then and that is really important and something that I'm definitely very grateful for. And so even when the things are sort of the cookie's not crumbling very well, you will have people, I hope, and you should certainly look towards cultivating these relationships. You'll have people to whom you can share that burden with and who will help you feel a little bit better about it. So yeah, understanding your negativity bias and working against it. And there are any number of other recommendations, such as keeping a gratitude journal and writing down all the things that went well. As we may have discussed in another part of the course, keeping a record of your successes and achievements and things that went well and how you've helped another person or were helped. That's a good thing to do because you forget those things when it comes to talking about things in your CV or in an interview and so on and so forth. So your negativity bias and how and considering ways to work against it. Another thing to consider is asking for help. So one of the things we might initially think is obvious is that you become valued and well regarded if you offer to help people. But it is often overlooked that actually the act of asking for help is one that is often experienced quite positively by the person who you're asking for help. Because one of the things I think is true is that many people mostly feel good when they feel as if they've genuinely helped someone with a problem. So don't think that asking for help is something negative or something that you should try to avoid because it makes you look as if you're not as fully competent as you would like to be or like to appear. what it can signal is like, here's a person who's asking for help in this domain, and by so doing, not only do I feel like competent in my job because I'm rendering help to someone, but that person may also form the opinion of this person knows how to ask for help, and in so doing, they form an opinion like, oh, obviously maybe you're actually, you know where your competencies are, and you know where your competencies aren't, and you're seeking help in those areas, and that's great. So don't be afraid to ask for help and guidance in a particular area, and of course to do so, in the right way for the person from whom you're asking help. And of course, not only should you only ask for help, I'm not saying you don't give help, but also, look for ways to be of assistance and to render help to other people as well. And not only, it depends on I suppose the kind of person you are, whether when it comes to offering help, whether you think that you would be more focused towards helping people who are, I guess, in a hierarchically superior position to you at work or lower. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that don't exclude people from the group of people who may well benefit and appreciate your help, which may well be people who are like newer than you or less experienced than you, but also your boss may well appreciate you giving a particular form of help on a project that means that he or she doesn't have to do a little bit of work and just makes their life a bit easier. So you can offer help in different directions as well. Another tip is what I will package. So Caroline Webb sort of splits these into two, but I'll bundle them together. Is to keep the bigger picture in view. And one of the things that she discusses is how some of the research says that having quick wins gives you an experience, or the experience of motion and progress. So not just focusing on like massive projects, but enabling yourself to undertake and recognize like smaller wins and smaller tasks that you've accomplished. And I think this is important in terms of your progress towards those bigger goals as well. And so this is, I guess the point is, I guess the frame I would be giving it is like keeping the bigger picture in view. And so even though you might be doing a number of menial tasks or smaller tasks that may not be so like intrinsically motivating, if you can keep the bigger picture in view, then you realize the importance and the value of that work. So this is a quote from her. But the best small goals are those that help us to take baby steps toward big goals that really mean something to us. That's clear from the findings of Harvard's Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer, who conducted a huge research project involving 200 professionals working at 7 companies. After processing thousands of hours and days of data, they concluded that of all the things that can boost emotions, motivation, and perceptions during a workday, the single most important is making progress in meaningful work. And so therefore you have the notion of progress and making progress towards that, and also what constitutes meaningful work for you. And so with respect to that sort of that fundamental purpose or motto, I mean, one thing I would say is that that having a clear view of what it is that motivates you is something that won't necessarily come into view like, in the near future, or if you don't feel as if you have an insight into that, that's totally fine, because I guess at the corresponding age of myself with the age which you're doing this course, probably, I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. But now I feel as if I can talk to it with much more certitude. And so I guess that being the case, you just do what you can with connecting it to stuff that feels as part of a bigger project and as part of your sort of more fundamental values or your purpose. And with respect to that purpose, in the course of either acknowledging it or developing it or cultivating it, and waiting for it, one of the things that is like really kind of big in the business world at the minute, so far as I can tell, is this whole like purpose movement. And so, I began to realize in the recent past that there are all these books and there are all these podcasts that are about purpose. Some of which I've listened to a little bit, not all of them by any means, but just to kind of illustrate, here are some on the screen now that I dug up and that I've seen in the months and years gone by. And so I guess so it's not to disparage it. I mean, I don't quite understand how you can talk quite so much and write so many books on the concept of purpose, because I don't know, in some ways it feels a little bit straightforward to me, but at the same time I can realize that for many businesses, trying to enable staff to feel purposeful in their work could be a challenge, and so trying to develop mechanisms for doing that is something that is definitely certainly worthwhile for the businesses, and may well definitely have positive like emotional, cognitive, or whatever the case, benefits to employees as well. So yeah, so I mean, partly just FYI, there is this whole world of purpose with respect to business that you might be interested in. So in chapter 19 of How to Have a Good Day, which is, I think, quite a nice name for a book, there are 3 other tips that Caroline Webb gives and also provides some research evidence for. Although, I mean, for me, I wouldn't need to look at the research evidence to feel convinced that these are good ideas. I'm not going to spend too long on them because I think they're kind of self-evident. So one is get the sleep you need. Very easy to just think of sleep as a period of time when you're not actually doing other useful stuff or enjoyable stuff. But actually, you know, getting the sleep that you need is definitely going to be correlated with positive mood and positive attitude in the day that follows the good sleep. Very easy just to kind of whittle away the evening hours, whatever, doom scrolling or whatever the case may be. But instead, I would be encouraging you to definitely place a high value on sleep and getting the sleep that you need, because and it's not, and you know, if you really want to be like, you know, utilitarian about it, definitely it's the case, and there are sayings in different languages about how having a sleep enables your brain to cognitively process some of the issues and problems that you're dealing with. And so many of you and, you know, and colleagues will have the experience of wrestling with an issue, going to sleep, and then waking up with kind of the answer to it the next morning. And so that's an indication of like sleep is not just like, you know, time not well spent, if you needed to be convinced of that. Another one, get the exercise you need, because, you know, your mind and your body are a part of a system that works together, and it's interactive, and exercise creates, you know, changes in body chemistry which are going to have positive impacts on both your body, because obviously, you know, exercise is something that you should be doing obviously to get fit, but also it lifts your mood. And so therefore, I mean, hopefully you're getting exercise, and good exercise and vigorous exercise, but also, yeah, but I guess the point being, don't underestimate the value of getting that exercise and its impact on your overall perspective on life and work life. And another one as well that you will have heard of, and is really kind of a big thing at the minute, is mindfulness, and mindfulness in enabling you to, I guess, be more self-aware of your emotions and attributing your emotions and your emotional reactions correctly. Yeah, not going to say too much about it. On the one hand, it's a fad at the minute, and there is a critique of it, saying that, you know, there are like massive global systemic structural issues, and people are trying to fix those in individuals by telling them to do mindfulness, right? So that's the critique. But at the same time, it's, you know, at least, you know, let's just go with Buddhism. I mean, Buddhism's been around for over 2,000 years, and its main, you know, thing is essentially mindfulness. And so therefore, in that sense, if you look at it like that, I mean, mindfulness is not a fad, it's not a new thing by any means. And there's definitely going to be advantages there. So so do consider it, and see whether it's something that suits you or suits you at this time. Yeah, so those are the 3 things that she talks about in chapter 19. Hi, sorry, my phone ran out of storage there, so I, you know, shifted some space. Yeah, chapter 19, that's basically what Caroline Webb's talking about. On the one hand, kind of obvious advice, on the other hand, so easy to overlook. So up to you to consider as it suits you. The other thing, obviously, to remember is that your mind and body are part of a system that work together, and that's why it's important to take care of both. But also, you are part of a social system as well. and how good you feel about your work life and things around you is also dependent on what constitutes that social system that you're a part of. So humans are essentially, and by nature, gregarious species. We need each other for the most part. And what you want to do is give some thought to the kinds of interactions and the kinds of people and the individuals that keep you positive and buoyant, and to try and foster those interactions as much as you can. Try not to think about interacting with other people as time away from getting work done and just like being at your desk and getting stuff done. Try to see interactions with people as part of your legitimate work, your legitimate work profile, and because not only is it making positive contributions to the work culture, it's also making positive contributions to you and the way you see work and the purposefulness that you are able to imbue your work with. So seek out people who give you good vibes and who, after interacting with them, make you feel really positive. That's something to definitely do, and to cultivate those relationships over time. So definitely seek those people out, cultivate those relationships slowly, and over time they will build into something really strong and meaningful. So definitely connecting with other people. Super obvious in the pandemic era that we've just been in and are coming out of. But again, like all these things, on the one hand sort of obvious, but on the other hand also very easy to overlook as well. And getting towards the end of what I have to say, the other thing is to try to recollect and remember just how fragmented and distracted we are these days. And so the people who are watching this video, this lecture, will have basically grown up with iPhones and smartphones and tablets and all the rest, kind of by them for most of their teenage, adolescent, and now adult lives. And so therefore there is a great naturalness to it, and a naturalness of checking social media and so on. But one of the things that, so there is like a value placed on multitasking, people who can multitask and so on, but I would concur with other people who would say that there is no such thing as multitasking. There's basically single tasking that gets highly fragmented, right? And one of the things to try and remember is that this fragments your attention, it weighs you down, and single tasking is actually something that is going to enable you to get more stuff done because you're not fragmenting your attention, and it will make you feel less fragmented and less distracted. It'll make you enable you to feel better. And this is advice that I also have to take. So such as when I'm preparing a lecture or teaching materials, and I hear my email box go bing, and I go, okay, I'm just curious to see what it is. Let's have a look. Oh, it's a small question, or I'll just answer it now. And then, even though it's a small distraction in a way, it is a distraction, and as you can well imagine, some people's days are just full of these little distractions. But one of the pieces of advice is that actually, if you single task, focus, and it'll leave you feeling better, and you will actually get more done in the totality of time. And the other thing to also remember, given how much time you and we have spent with our smartphones over the last 10 or however many years, is that our brains are just beginning to become less well wired towards focusing. And so one of the things that you can definitely consider is thinking about your relationship with your phone and with, your distractions. And also what you can do to develop your ability to focus and to do deep work and that sort of thing. Because you will, I believe, feel more fulfilled and more effective, and it'll just be generally better if you can cultivate those powers of focus and attention. So and speaking of doing like one thing at a time, the other thing I think to end on is also the notion of taking one day at a time as well. And the idea of taking one day at a time is one that often occurs in the context of of a period of recovery from something bad happening, whether it's an injury or so. And so you're taking one day at a time in your journey towards getting back to normal. But I don't think we just have to look at this notion of one day at a time as as a recovery period from something, but actually as in a more positive sense as well. So when I read the quote at the beginning of the How to Have a Good Day book, which is how she starts the book, which is how we spend our days is of course how we spend our lives, it really reminded me that actually each day is a day in itself. It's not just a day of building towards, it's a day of building, but at the same time in itself intrinsically something to get as much fulfillment out of as possible. So it's not just like a day of sacrifice towards that future goal, which we think will bring us happiness, but it's actually a day to try and value in itself. And and one of the nice things about today is it started as like a really gloomy, rainy day, but here I am outside, and it's just the perfect day. So it's so in that sense, it's kind of a nice dovetail in that sense. Because here I am, I'm developing the lecture, I'm building the lecture towards being able to give it to you folks in a few days' time. But it's actually just so nice to be here amongst the plants and everything. And I guess I'm really grateful that I'm in a position where I can do this. It's part of my work to be able to think about these things and to share them with you, and with no obligation on your part to assimilate it all and to take it all on board. And because one of the things that we are developing is, I guess, a critical attitude towards the stuff that we encounter, and it's definitely the case that you should take a critical attitude towards the stuff that I've said today to see the extent to which it fits you, but also not to be cynical either, and to say anything that comes from like a business or self-help book is going to be rubbish as well. And the great thing is that you have the ability and the confidence to make those decisions yourself. Anyway, I went on a bit of a tangenty sort of rambly thing, but I'll leave it there. Apart from saying thank you, and I hope some of that was of interest and of value. Thanks. Hello. Very dusty. Hi, so here I am. I am in building 12 or 14 on a terrace area, which you've probably been to before. Really nice. That's obviously whatever that building is. And around here is just some lovely plants. That would be like a nice angle for a shoot as well. And here is the sort of the brutalist RMIT architecture that leads on to Bowen Lane down there. So yeah, that's where I am today. Take care, and see you in class. Bye.